right, so good afternoon. Again, I'm Lene Fragamini and First Vice President of the Chamber, and I'm looking forward to our time together this afternoon.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you. All right, so we'll get right into it. Our first question for you is, now that the Downtown Association is being disbanded, how do you see the city stepping in to fill that gap, especially around things like advocacy and city services? And is there a plan in place going forward?
Well, thanks, Lene. Thanks to the Chamber for hosting me, and looking forward to the chat with everyone here from the business community, from city staff, from organizations across the city. As a bit of a tradition, when the mayor is invited to anywhere, he recognizes councillors that are in the audience. So I don't have any current councillors here, but we do have Russ Hilderly here, who was the Ward 3 councillor many, many years ago, right? So I wanted to say hello to Russ and recognize him for his service in, what decade was it? Was it the 20s, 30s? No, Russ was one of my predecessors in Ward 3 back when it included Anita Boulevard. I remember the story of him telling me a constituent calling him at 3 in the morning. So he called them back with the answer the next day at 3 in the morning. So I always thought that was a clever trick that he pulled on them. So Downtown Association, I will get to the answer, but I wanted to get that anecdote out first. So the way that we are going to ensure advocacy from downtown businesses once the DTA is disbanded, which won't be till the end of the year. So there's a transition period to get to where council directed we're going to go, is to create an advocacy board. So what I have believed for a long time and what council debated and what ultimately was decided on is that the model of the Downtown Association, at least in a community of our size, may have worked in the past, but it wasn't working at present. And the Downtown Association, since I joined council 11 years ago, has gone through 5 executive directors. And they're having a hard time, as I understand it, keeping staff because of the, I don't want to make this a criticism of them, but they're a small organization that is often used as a springboard to go somewhere else. I mean, just at the city, we've hired 2 of their Downtown Association directors. So keeping staff was difficult, and every time you change over an executive director, it leads to a period of renewal, a new path set either by that person's plans or by what they had said they could achieve in their interview and recruitment process. Having someone at the city, I mean, the city's a big organization that provides good benefits and a good wage and good stability. It'll provide that continuity, I think, in planning downtown events and planning downtown marketing that the DTA wasn't able to get. And we will still have the advocacy by having an advisory committee similar to the tourism board that we've got and similar to the economic development advisory board that we've got that informs the decisions and the recommendations that come to council that ultimately are made by city council. The other benefit of it, in my opinion, is that it won't just be the 200 or 300 businesses that front on Queen Street between Pym and Dennis. It'll be what the city considers to be the entire downtown, from the Canal District to the Bush Plain Museum and the north side of Queen Street down to the waterfront. So it'll encompass what I think most people here would consider the true downtown and not just the historic Queenstown area on Queen Street itself. So for sure there is people who will be critical of that decision, and I understand that that's a reality of being in this job. You're going to have to make decisions that some people will like and some people won't. But I think it ultimately will prove to be the best decision for downtown marketing and events for the community as a whole.
Very good. Are we looking to incorporate some of the people that were involved with it to be involved in those committees?
Yeah, certainly we haven't put out the call for board nominations yet. That'll likely be done closer to the end of this year as we set up to officially take over those responsibilities at City Hall. But it'll be open to everyone. I think, frankly, that there's a lot of expertise on the board, and it can be added to or buttressed with people who are in the downtown who aren't currently on in the Queenstown section of the downtown. So I think it'll be good historic portion of the Queenstown Association board, buttressed by people from other attractions in the downtown area.
Fabulous. You ready for the next one?
I hope so.
All right. Your 6-month report talks about public space investments downtown, things like the plaza, the bus terminal move. How do you see these contributing to revitalization and business attraction in the downtown core?
So I think that for many decades, we have had an underinvestment in the downtown, and for the last decade or so, it seems to have become a popular topic at council and in the community to talk about downtown revitalization. So part of spurring on that revitalization is to do public investment so that the private sector feels confident that they are supporting an area that gets support. It was a similar type argument with James Street revitalization. The city hadn't put any money into the whole James Street neighborhood or the Old West End in almost 40 years at the time that the Steel Town Down documentary came out. And after that, it spurred a significant amount of city attention and dollars with revitalization of Anna Marinelli Park, with the James Street revitalization plan that has almost been entirely completed. I think there was a couple of minor outstanding items on that list, but the city investment gives confidence to private investors that there is a commitment to the area. And that's what, I disagreed with the costs of the plaza when it was built, voted against the escalating costs on a number of occasions, but it does represent commitment to the downtown by council. It's why I think, and I supported and advocated for the purchase of the old General Hospital. I know that the media likes to say that we bought it for $2 million, or bought it for $4 million and sold it for $1. The reality is the whole package was a $2 million sale, and we are going to recoup our investment within 8 to 10 years. So it's an investment in the revitalization of the entranceway to our downtown, because you can't get into Queen Street without passing by that blight. And it had become a symbol of what was ailing our downtown: underinvestment, derelict properties. And so if we can spur on, as we hope to do in the short term, the demolition of that building, the revitalization of the Reno building, investments in the plaza, hopefully we'll have some redevelopment of the Station Mall site in the near future with a prospective new buyer. So I think that there is lots of opportunity for the private sector to say the city has shown a commitment to the downtown, and we will follow with private sector dollars.
I think people are planning an event to watch the demolition of that building come down.
I'll provide the popcorn. I'll provide the popcorn.
Absolutely. Okay, there's been an ongoing discussion around safety and perception of our downtown. From your perspective, what's the city going to do to address these concerns, and where do you see the biggest opportunities for change?
So one of the commitments I made in my election platform when I ran for mayor was to get a police station in the downtown area. Now my long-term hope is that we reestablish the police service building in the downtown. The building is 50 years old, is really two buildings that have been patched together over the course of those 50 years. So it's in need of revitalization, but it's also going to cost tens of millions of dollars. And the way that police costs are escalating in current years means that we don't have tons of money to go to police capital. It's all going to police operations. So it's probably a 10 to 15 year plan to see their building revitalized, but when it is revitalized, the plan should be to revitalize it in the downtown. One of the issues with our downtown core is that over the last 15 years, you've had PUC move out. St. Mary's College used to be in the downtown, the hospital used to be in the downtown, and a number of businesses that have been relocated to more convenient and larger spaces uptown. So in as far as we can move city functions or city adjacent functions downtown, we should take the opportunity to do so, and moving a downtown police station there on a permanent basis is part of that revitalization. But in the meantime, there has been opening up of Division 2 on Brock Street, at the top of Brock Street, which really already has had an impact. I've talked to a number of business owners that say they've seen police walk the beat in the downtown area. They do training on bikes for new police officers in the downtown area. So I think opening up of Division 2 is a good interim step until we can get to the day where we've got a full police service operations in the downtown. It is, you know, the thread that can get us to that point. But that is how we can improve the perception and reality of public safety in the downtown, by having more police presence. And we've also had, for the last 16 or 18 months, a downtown security program paid for by the city with commissionaires or NORPRO officers. I can't remember who has the contract, ensuring that they're walking the beat. This was prior to Division 2 opening up, but it's an enhanced level of security. In addition to that, we've got the downtown ambassadors who do street outreach and help people that are, suffering the obvious signs of homelessness or addictions issues connect to services, so that instead of being on the sidewalk or in the doorways or in the alleyways downtown, they can get them to the right services and direct them that way, which ultimately helps the people who are walking downtown for lunch or to go shopping feel safer being down there.
Are those programs a 24-hour, or are they just in isolated time frames?
So it's a hodgepodge of time frames. So the downtown ambassadors have specific times that are opposite of the downtown security patrols. The police service runs their day shift, which I think is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. downtown, but not a night shift yet. The hope is that as we are able to fund these programs, everything is expensive, of course, as we are able to fund these programs, we can cover more time downtown. But right now there are still some gaps in the downtown, so I don't think we hit 24 hours of any service individually, but we try and get as much of the 24-hour period of multiple services.
Perfect. All righty. All right, we'll move into some business and economic growth questions. With the current economic downturns and concerns around inflation and interest rates, how is the city adapting its approach to support local businesses in this climate?
Well, one of the things that I do regularly is have contact with our major employers in town to make sure that the advocacy that they need from the federal and provincial governments is aligned with the advocacy we're doing. So I was in Toronto earlier this week, meeting with the Premier and meeting with various members of the provincial cabinet. When the Prime Minister was here during the campaign, I met with him to advocate for the needs of the community. And so we want to amplify the message that those businesses here. We know there is concerns, obviously, about the tariffs from our largest employer. It's affecting their main export. So we want to advocate on their behalf with the provincial and federal governments to make sure that whatever responses Algoma and Daenerys and other major industrial players need from the federal government, whether it's direct tariff support for the business or support for any employees that are affected by the tariffs, whether it's through layoffs or otherwise, or a downturn in the number of shifts, that those supports are available from the provincial and federal government. So that advocacy has been shaped almost entirely by the needs of the community. And then there is the advocacy that we do to try and diversify our economy and try and fill labor needs in the community where there are current shortages. So the advocacy that we do on the immigration programs that we've got in place locally, the Rural Community Immigration Program, which used to be called the Rural and Northern Immigration Program, or RNIP is a common term you will hear me say throughout this, and RSIP. So RNIP is the old program, RSIP is the new program. It helps employers ensure that their labor needs are met with the right people. And if they can't find the talent locally or provincially, that we can go internationally and find the right person for the right job. So it's, we'll get into, I think, some questions about immigration as we go through this. But it is a specific need that many industries in town have for specific skill sets that might not otherwise be able to be filled locally. So advocating for programs like that to fill those labor needs is critical, advocating for responses to the tariffs, and then advocating for diversification of the economy. And this is what we're doing at City Hall right now through the Economic Development Organization. They're always courting businesses that are looking to set up here, where there is an economic impetus or reason to set up here, as well as taking advantage of our location in the middle of the Great Lakes. One of the things we have been focusing on is the development of the Port of Algoma, with the hopes that it will allow for critical minerals to be shipped down into Sault Ste. Marie, either by truck or by rail along the ACR, right into the port, and then shipped out to the world from here. And that is a way that we can diversify the economy and expand on, and take advantage, frankly, of the fact that we're in the middle of the Great Lakes and we can reach the American Midwest, the Canadian East Coast, and the American Northeast, and almost right into the heart of the prairies and American Midwest as well. So that is, I would say 3 of the ways that that we've changed our advocacy to address current challenges, and that we are looking to the future to try and offset some of the potential impacts of, not just this economic downturn or these economic uncertainties, but to try and buttress us against future economic uncertainties.
Fabulous. So how is the city working to ensure it remains competitive and attractive to new business, especially in light of the challenges like labor shortages and global uncertainty?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about RCIP, which is the Rural Community Immigration Program. I don't think it's a coincidence that this program, or its predecessor, RNIP, started in 2021. We accepted our first immigrant through the program that filled a labor need in the community. And there have been, I may get this number wrong, but I think 176 businesses that have taken advantage of this immigration program to fill a job that would otherwise go unfilled. And if the job goes unfilled, that need is going unfilled in the community, and the business has to either get a different part, through some other supplier, or do a function elsewhere in the world because they can't fill the need here, or they go without, which again also hurts our local economy and the business itself. So having that number of businesses supported by the Immigration Pilot Program is one of the key ways that the city has been able to leverage its place in the market. We've got our labor force development coordinator here who is excellent at matching employees to needs in the community and to businesses in the community to make sure that no job that needs to be filled is going unfilled. And as I was saying, I don't think it's a coincidence that the program started in 2021, and that's the last year that we saw a downturn in our population. Since then, 2022, 2023 and onwards, we have seen an uptick in our population by 2.5% a year, 5% over 2 years. We're waiting for new numbers for last year because our death rate otherwise outpaces our birth rate. So we will shrink as a community if we don't bring new immigrants in. I know that a lot of us here have an immigrant story to tell. I'm sure you do. I certainly do. I tell it often about my mom coming here in 1969 as an Italian immigrant, leaving most of her family behind, many of whom still live there. So our community has been a welcoming community over 100 years, largely because of the industries that have attracted hardworking immigrants from across the world, and the industries we have continue to attract hardworking immigrants from across the world. So it's one of the ways that we can diversify our economy by helping fill jobs and having programs like RCIP that companies can take advantage of to fill their labor force needs. And then just specifically on our competitiveness, in 2016 or 17 it was, we passed a long-term tax strategy that would see our commercial and industrial tax rates come down. Just a couple weeks ago at council, there was a decision to, because there has been growth in our tax base with new housing builds and new commercial builds, the growth gets allocated to the commercial and industrial sector more than the residential sector, which means we have been able to increase the industrial and commercial burdens less than the residential burden. But we've done it through growth. So it's not that one It's not that the residential sector is paying for the commercial sector's tax shift. It's that the growth is being allocated to the commercial and industrial sectors, and everybody is benefiting. So it's one of the ways we're bringing the tax burden down for industry and commercial businesses. And then on the Downtown Association, if I can get back to that point very briefly, the decision we made at council to dissolve the Downtown Association will save downtown merchants on Queen Street a direct amount that they would otherwise be paying to the DTA, and that is now basically being absorbed into the global city budget. So it's a direct tax saving to anybody that's on Queen Street between Pym and Dennis.
So I know some of the questions are going to sort of overlap a little bit, but we're going to hit into them because some of them take it into a little bit of a different direction. But there's a lot of chatter around the federal tariffs, especially related to steel and trade with the US. Is there any local conversations or preparations happening at the city level in case this escalates further?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the advocacy that we do with the provincial and federal governments. I think that the longer it goes on, frankly, the worse it is going to be for our community. I don't think there's any hiding that fact. The tariffs, last time they were in place, it's public knowledge, cost the steel plant hundreds of millions of dollars. I suspect it will be similar this time. I hope that the tariffs are in place for less time. They were imposed in March. We're now practically in June. So we're going on, 3 months. I'm hoping we can get a resolution of that issue as quick as possible, because it is going to hurt if it goes on as long as it did last time. And the advocacy that we do needs to be ramped up, not, we can't get accustomed to having them in place or just accept that they are there. The longer it goes on, the more dire it becomes, the louder our voices need to be heard. And that's why we do advocacy with, I've had advocacy I'd mentioned with the Premier and the Prime Minister, but also with our counterparts in Sault, Michigan, the Sault, Michigan Council. We have a joint meeting next week, 2 weeks from now, to advance, the relationship. And through the relationship, you ask them to advocate against the tariffs with their government. We saw some court decisions out of the U.S. yesterday that may affect the legality of tariffs. We'll see. I'm sure they'll be appealed and take some time to work through the judicial system. But I think every bit of advocacy we could do is critical, and that's why with the mayor of Sault, Michigan, we've advocated to their congressman right across the river, Jack Bergman, to bring the message to Washington that the tariffs are not only hurting our primary industry here in Sault Ste. Marie, they're hurting the Sault, Michigan economy, because they are reliant on us to go over there and spend dollars. And that's why I've been asking, the community to spend as much as they can locally and to keep their dollars locally. That's why we're doing the advocacy with Sault, Michigan to try and get their government to change their mind, because it is not going to be Canadians that get the American government to change its mind. It's going to be Americans to get the American government to change their mind. So that is what we're doing on the international front. More, closer to home, if I can call it that. I'm part of the Border Mayors Alliance that is advocating with different U.S. counterparts. So here in the Sioux, we advocated with Jack Bergman, the congressman over there. But in New Brunswick, they're advocating with Susan Collins, who is a fairly independent-minded senator from Maine. Though she's a Republican, she's fairly centrist and moderate. And so the U.S. Republican majority is not so big that they can afford to lose these moderates. So advocating with people like her is a crucial ally. And Lisa Murkowski, the Alaskan senator, is also a moderate. She stood up in the U.S. Senate and said that the administration is completely wrong-headed in its pursuit of tariffs against Canada that are more severe than its pursuit of tariffs against China, which is a fallacy, frankly, given that we have been their longest-standing ally and will continue to be their longest-standing ally. So using that Border Mayors Alliance to get to the right people in the right border states, or in the right, that serve the right type of district that is going to get the president's attention, is what I've tried to do and what I've tried to be part of.
Nice. How has our U.S. counterparts here, while you're dealing, are they being receptive to the conversations?
They're definitely receptive. I think we have been able to leverage a couple of circumstances that have really shown that though the U.S. president might say we don't need anything Canada has, the reality is quite different. So just a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, there was a huge ice storm in the lower Upper Peninsula, and the PUC sent crews down to Michigan, and that required some Homeland Security waivers that the congressman helped get. It just so happened that the meeting I had with the congressman was a couple days after that. So it was a real good reminder of the fact that, hey, you do need us. We're here to help when you call us, so don't treat us like the enemy.
Yeah.
And so they have been receptive at times. I don't think we have seen, an opening of the floodgates in terms of a change in public opinion in Congress or in the Senate. But the longer it goes on and the more examples there are of this, mutual benefit that our countries offer each other, I think the better off that the Canadian advocacy piece will be. And hopefully in tandem with that, the federal government can renegotiate whatever the new NAFTA is called, some weird acronym.
All right. Okay, over the last couple of years, we're seeing more newcomers to our community, which is great for our local labor force. What's the city's current approach to making sure Sault Ste. Marie is a place where new residents feel welcomed and supported long-term?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a challenge too. One of the things that was being raised early on in my term as mayor that frankly I had very little awareness of was the fact that there was not a halal butcher in town. And this is an issue for folks who need halal meat. And so the specificity of the needs in various cultural communities need attention, and it's something that ultimately was able to be worked out with a local butcher providing that service. But it's just a conversation that happens, that an issue arises and you try and tackle it as best as you can. So that issue arose and it was able to be tackled. Without my involvement, thankfully, although I had heard about it and was prepared to try and help in whatever way we could. It ended up getting resolved, through market forces, which is good. But we've got the local immigration partnership that helps welcome newcomers. We've got a number of cultural groups, NOLA, the Northern Ontario Hispanic Latin Association. We've got ACANO, the African Caribbean Canadian Association. I'm missing an act. Anyways, I'm missing a letter in there. And these groups have cultural events that I try to attend as often as possible. The city supports in many ways, financially and through attendance. And so being a welcoming community is part of showing up and being at events and supporting events and making sure that the needs are listened to and addressed to the greatest degree possible. So that's what we are trying to do as a community. I think, as I mentioned, we are familiar and comfortable with immigration in our community, given that most of us are not too many generations removed from a direct immigrant. And so remembering that and appreciating that in those interactions, that that was us not too long ago, is a good way to approach the subject and a good way to, I think, make people feel like they're going to be heard. We've also got the anti-hate committee at council that gathers people of different cultural and faith backgrounds and listens to their stories and their issues that they're facing in the community so that those issues can be tackled and dealt with by council.
Good. So you highlighted the city's new immigration portal in your recent report. What are you hearing from employers about how that tool is helping attract talent?
Well, it's good. The old program, frankly, was a little less stringent and was, dare I say, better than the new immigration pilot program. And so we have been working with our federal counterpart to make sure that the new program, RCIP, works as well as the old program did, RNIP.
because we thought the old program worked great. It's why we welcomed, of all the 18 communities that were part of ARNIP, we welcomed the first immigrants or invitees through that program, and we did the best per capita in terms of number of people we recruited. I think I want to say 2 of the 4 years or 3 of the 5 years, we welcomed more than the number of people that were assigned to Sault Ste. Marie. So 300 people that the Sioux had assigned to it that could be, that labor shortages could be filled with those positions. And each year that we were able to, we exceeded that number by taking from other communities that weren't filling their labor market gaps as much as possible. So the new program seems to have changed just ever so slightly and become a bit more stringent in being able to, if you've got extra capacity in an industry, like this is unrealistic, but if, for example, there were jobs unfilled in the healthcare sector, which we all know is not a true scenario, if there were jobs unfilled in the healthcare sector, well, you could move it to the industrial sector. If they were unfilled in the industrial sector, you could move it to the healthcare sector. You don't seem to be able to do that anymore, so we're working with the federal government to try and say, allocate whatever the number is, 300, 350, 400 invitees to the Sioux, and let us work with our business community to try and fit them to the right jobs. Don't tell us that they have to be in this sector or this sector and this sector. We are going to fill the jobs that pay the best, have the best long-term prospects in the community, have the best prospects for having someone invite their family to come and join them, have the best prospects for filling a critical need in the community like healthcare. So allow us to, control our own destiny in that regard, and don't be so stringent with the program that it's going to leave spots unfilled, because I don't think that benefits the communities that need the program. So there's some tweaks that need to be worked through, but I talked to our MP yesterday, and he's promises me he's on the case.
So you've touched on this one a little bit as well. You noted that immigration is part of the city's long-term. We already did that one. I'm moving on. Anyway,
Same answer.
I was going to say, with the recent layoffs at Algoma Steel, how does the city see immigration and workforce development playing a role in reshaping or rebalancing the local economy?
I'd mentioned that all of our growth essentially was tied to the number of people that came through the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot Program. So of the 300 people per year over the several years that the program ran, so our growth in population number was something like 1,700. Well, we welcomed 1,800 immigrants through that population program. So it's the 300 per year that we welcomed through the program directly, and then it was 700 or 800 of their family members that came with them. So that's how you turn 300 into 1,800. That's lawyer math for you. But with the prospect that Algoma will have a lower number of workers after their transition to the electric arc furnace, it is more important than ever that we advocate and actually carry through with plans to develop the Port of Algoma, as I mentioned, to seek out opportunities through the Economic Development Organization of the city to add 50 jobs here or 100 jobs there. We're going to, frankly, we think the port is one of those things that while it might only be 30 or 40 jobs at the beginning, obviously the construction of it will take several hundred jobs, then it might be 30 or 40 jobs at the beginning full-time, sorry. But as the businesses in the region, the gold mines or the mines in the Ring of Fire get developed, and the capacity to ship out more critical minerals is increased, we think that that's got the prospect of growing from a 30 or 40 job organization to a 100 or 200 job organization. So that is one of the critical pieces that we're advocating for developing, so that we can have that shift in our economy. I'm looking at Don Mitchell. I think Don's been working on the port since Lake Superior was formed, which was several centuries ago. But I mean, that's right, since Russ was a councillor. But the reality is it has had, the it has had the promise of being able to be one of the ways where we could diversify our economy for 50 years, and it hasn't been built. And so we're going to make sure this time. I mean, I reminded the Prime Minister when I spoke to him a couple weeks ago that in each of his stump speeches, he said they were going to build pan-Canadian infrastructure like pipelines and ports and railways. And so I said, we will give you a port, gift wrapped, for you to be able to open at the next election. So we are hopeful that that is going to receive the funding from the federal government to build it. We will commit, city funds, I trust, to doing so, and provincial dollars to making it happen, and hopefully private investment as well to make it happen. So we will leverage the dollars that we can piece together to get it done, and hopefully have it grow from there. So that's on the diversification of the economy that we can undertake directly. I was, as I mentioned, just at Queen's Park, and I have advocated for a long time and continue to advocate for all OLG jobs being moved to Sault Ste. Marie. And that is a way the provincial government could today offset job losses that we know could be coming next year or within the next 12 to 18 months. So we think that certainly we, the royal we, I think that OLG jobs belong in Sault Ste. Marie. They call this their headquarters, even though 60% of the workforce is in Toronto, even though 90% of the executive is in Toronto. They call this the headquarters. So if they think it's the headquarters, they being the provincial government, make it the headquarters where most of the jobs are, where all the jobs are, frankly, and all of the executives are. And that would be a direct way to offset job losses at the steel plant that they could help us with today.
You have touched on this as well, but the city's long-term infrastructure goals, especially those that support the commercial industry growth, and like a little bit more even with some of the smaller business.
So we are going to stop putting money into anything except potholes based on a Sault Today poll. So no, the long-term infrastructure goals are to get more housing built, because more housing creates more growth in the tax base, which can be leveraged, as I mentioned, to reduce the commercial and industrial tax burden, which can then help attract additional commercial and industrial investment. So having the tax burden, the commercial and industrial tax rate lower, is one of the long-term goals, and you do that by adding housing and by adding infrastructure that supports housing. So we have approved the expansion of Sackville Road, which will add 350 to 400 houses in the Sackville Road area around Fort Creek. We've approved every rezoning that has come to council in the 11 years I've been on council, including recently 220 units at the top of McDonald Avenue, 110 units at the Legion, 110 units at Cara. I see Jeff Meekin here, the chairperson of Cara Community Organization. So it's groups like Cara, frankly, that can help us achieve our goals by using underutilized property that had a church on it before, served a good purpose, but the church needed renewal. Cara has a long history of helping with the housing needs of the community, and so they leveraged both of those things to make sure that they were maximizing their infrastructure, their land use, to provide benefits to their members, to provide housing to the community. It's providing new tax dollars to the city, which in turn will help reduce the industrial and commercial tax burden. So that little act of tearing down the church and building a new place of worship with 110 units above it is doing all four of those things. The Legion did the same, and there will be other organizations, we hope, that will take advantage of those incentives that are in place currently to achieve the city's goal, long-term infrastructure goals of bringing down the tax burden so we can spur commercial and industrial development.
So the Ontario's Municipal Partnership Fund was boosted this year, and the recent provincial budget included a targeted support specifically for the North. What does that mean for Sault Ste. Marie?
I meant to look this number up before I came. The Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, I want to say, was increased by, let's call it $2 million this year, which is a lot. I mean, we don't see $2 million in new money almost ever in the municipal budget. So we sometimes get a capital grant, for multi-millions of dollars that you can use for this, right? Like we got a grant to extend Sackville, but that's just for Sackville. But this is an ongoing increase in the city's budget. So what it helps do, again, is bring down the tax rate for everyone. Whereas, you know, the commercial, industrial, and residential sector might have otherwise faced a 4% tax increase. I want to say this year it was about 3.6 or 3.8%. Of that, though, notably, and I'll give the city kudos here, only 1.5 or 1.7% was the city's increase. So our tax increase that city council controls has been well below the rate of inflation for almost the entire time I've been on council, even when the global tax increase is higher than that, because the city can tax, social services can tax, library can tax, police can tax, and the Conservation Authority can tax. Those are 5 organizations that form the basis of your tax bill. The city's share of that global increase has been lower than inflation the whole time I've been on council, except maybe 1 year, which we try and banish from our memories. So that means that we have worked as hard as we can, frankly, to reduce the burden on commercial, industrial, and residential taxpayers, and the money from the provincial government by way of the increase in the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund has helped us do that this past year and will help us do that going forward. So they just announced in the most recent budget another increase to that grant. We don't know what the dollar amount is yet, but again, that'll help us achieve the goals, just like building new housing will. It all plays together to fulfill the long-term tax strategy of trying to get our industrial tax rate down, because we know it's high.
So I feel like you've answered most of this next one, but you may have something else you want to chat about it. You mentioned that 2,000 plus new housing units approved in the last year. What are you most excited about with this growth, and where do you see this having the biggest impact on our community?
Largely the impact it'll have on the community is by reducing or by being able to have new tax assessment, which reduces the commercial and industrial tax rate. But I think just having growth happening in the community and the residential sector, first off, it allows people to continue to buy and afford houses. We know that the price of housing has gone up in the city and across the province, frankly. But the city has been assigned a housing target. I want to say it's, I don't know, 240 or 260 new units per year for the next 10 years. And we have exceeded our target the last 2 years. So 2 years ago by 190%. Last year, we don't have the final quarters numbers in, but by the end of October, we were already 160% over the target. So it'll probably be almost 200% over the target again. So in growing our housing capacity, we will have more housing per capita than a place like Toronto, which goes back to the point about the OLG, that if you're making $100,000 in Toronto at OLG and trying to buy $1 million house there, it's a lot different than making $100,000 here in the Sault and trying to buy a house that's worth $400,000 or $500,000 or $600,000. I mean, you've got a lot more disposable income in those two scenarios, especially when, frankly, for $1 million in Toronto, you're going to get a place that is a tenth of what you're going to get here for $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. So while the quantum there might not be that big of a gap in the quantum, the amount of house you will get for that quantum is way more in the Sault than it is in Toronto, and that'll leave you additional disposable income to be able to buy a camp, to be able to go to a restaurant, to be able to do whatever you can here. So having our housing growth numbers exceed what we are supposed to be getting will help us achieve our economic development goals, because the province, as we have suggested to them, is going to need to reward places that are doing better than the places that are not meeting their targets, because that is only going to make those communities, I'm thinking of Toronto specifically, less affordable, harder to break into, and it's going to reach a tipping point at some point where nobody is going to be able to afford to live and work in Toronto, and so they will look to communities like Sault Ste. Marie as the great white hope that they can afford a house and have a job.
Do you see our biggest need being, students, seniors, or is it that workforce for housing?
There's definitely a need for housing at the university and the college. I think before the feds changed the international student rules, you saw both organizations had planned dorms, new residences is the word I'm looking for. They had planned new residences at the Sault Algoma campus and at the Sault College campus because of the ham-fisted way that the federal government rolled out the scale back of international students. I don't think either of those projects is going to go forward in the short term, but there is a need for additional capacity at Sault College and at Algoma U to be able to grow and attract more students. So definitely there's a need for student housing. I think the biggest market need, if I can put it that way, in the community is definitely overhoused seniors that don't have a good enough place to go. I mean, there's lots of places in town that are smaller, but they're boarded up, and they've been bought up by these institutional buyers that have not cared for them properly. And so having good amenities, and this is why you've seen the waiting list for the Legion and the waiting list for the Cara building be 300 and 400 people long, even though they've got 100 units there, because there is a desperate need for a good, accessible, reasonably priced unit in the community. And that also frees up, a family home that many seniors are living in their family home because there's nowhere good enough for them to go in the community. And so building out that capacity for seniors to move into and downsize will also free up, what we call the missing middle of houses, which is those pea patch style houses that people can buy and raise a family in.
So can you provide any additional updates or thoughts on your Northern Ontario large urban mayor's visit to Queen's Park and the Port of Algoma development project, among other items that were discussed?
Yeah, well, there was lots discussed. The 5 mayors across the north, we really get along well. So there's the mayor of Timmins, Sudbury, Thunder Bay, North Bay, and myself that form the Northern Ontario large urban mayors. And it's amazing how similar the issues are from community to community. Advocacy on healthcare recruitment was a big issue across the north, and how we can use Nossum University in each of our communities. Sudbury and Thunder Bay already have Nossum University campuses, but how we can expand the presence of Nossum University in the Sault, how we can expand the presence of Nossum University in Timmins and in North Bay to try to attract more physicians to each of our communities. Because of the, I'm not sure exactly what their enrollment is per year, but let's call it 200 students. I think that's a low ball, but of the 200 students, let's say 100 of them go to Thunder Bay and 100 of them go to Sudbury. The majority of the people who stay in the north, so only about 50% of the students who go to Nossum U stay in the north. So if you've got 100 going to Thunder Bay, 100 going to Sudbury, and 50% of them leaving, that leaves you 50 in Sudbury and 50 in Thunder Bay. The majority of those 50 stay in Thunder Bay and stay in Sudbury. Some of them come to the Sault if they've got a connection to here, or go to Timmins or North Bay if they've got a connection to there. But it is proven that the best way to get someone to stay here is to entrench them in the community, and so have them do their residency here. Maybe they meet a spouse or a partner. Maybe they fall in love with our Italian food. Maybe they, enjoy the cultural offerings that we've got. I know your group at Arthur has been embedded in Sault Sings for Kids for a number of years. Things like that make the Sault what it is. And so having people, dive into the Sault experience encourages them to stay here. So advocating for more of an awesome presence in our communities so that we can retain more physicians that are trained or can go to school here. Advocating for funding for police costs, because of the 5 communities, the lowest increase last year in police costs was 11%, and the highest was 17%. We were right in the middle at 13%, but even then, the 13% was what was budgeted. What was spent was 16% over the previous year. So we advocated for funding for the crushing burden of policing costs in our communities. We advocated for specific infrastructure projects. Each of our communities has a specific infrastructure need. Ours was the Port of Algoma, and each community wants to see a 4-lane highway running from the Manitoba border to the Quebec border, and that would benefit us all. So advocating for highway improvements. I mean, they're talking about building a tunnel under the 401 instead of 4-laning a highway where we're driving, inches away from transports on roads that, a third of the year are in whiteout conditions, and there's accidents on them. And some of the deadliest stretches of road in the province are in the north. In fact, all of the deadliest stretches of roads in the province are in the north. So the fact that they would even propose a fallacy like a tunnel under the 401 instead of providing the north equal access to infrastructure like Southern Ontario's got is comical and frightening at the same time.
Okay, so the 6-month report